Baby, let's get married. All right, what's happening today on SOB, Standing on Business with Alicia Cooper? And we're going to stand on business about this Allen Iverson Prime Video documentary. I just watched episode one, and when this goes off, I'll upload episode two for y'all, and then the final episode, episode three. So you'll be able to see all my reviews on all three of the episodes. We're just going to do episode one right now. Very good documentary. I've watched a lot of Allen Iverson documentaries. This one was really well done. They got a lot of interviews that other documentaries didn't get, and they have him, and he's retired. He's an older gentleman. He was born in 75. So what does that make him? He's like 50 now. And he's just mature. He's retired. He's reflective. Excellent, excellent first episode. So, I knew there was a lot I knew about him already. I knew he grew up in the Newport News, Hampton, Virginia area. And this was just wonderful. The first episode started out with them giving him his street. He had a street named for him called Allen Iverson Way. And this was the day he had an opportunity to come and see the street sign. And a lot of his family and friends were there. Big commemorative day. He earned it. He deserved it. And I just learned a lot about him too. Like his mother, Ann Iverson, was 15 years old when she gave birth to Allen. And a lot of times when people give birth that early, they grow up with the child. Like it's like the child is like their sibling, like their little brother and not their son. This was not the case with Ann Iverson. And Ann Iverson's mother was involved, but Ann was not his sister. She was not his friend. She was not his peer. Somehow this young lady leveled up and became a serious authority figure. She did not play with Allen. She spanked him. There was no gentle parenting. There was no timeouts and think about what you did. Because she said that she was making sure that he stayed on the right and narrow. She had a vision for his life. And Allen said he got a lot of spankings too. So, and so his nickname, everybody knows him as Bubba Chuck. The reason he got that name is because he had two uncles both fighting to have him named after them, his uncle Bubba and his uncle Chuck. So the mother said, we're just going to call him Bubba Chuck. But what I loved is his extended family is so deep and they love so hard that you really get the feeling that he wasn't going to be able to fall so far. He really had and has a village. What people need to realize, and it's an African proverb, and it's how African people live in African countries. They go by the village. Too many societies are individual, and they're selfish. They can't work together. It's every man or woman for themselves. When you have a village, that's the best thing that can happen for you. When you have 3 and 4 generations of people loving on you, it's harder for you to fall. And that's what I see in the Allen Iverson documentary. He has a village. So, and let me tell you, him and his mama, Ann, they both have the same big, beautiful brown eyes. That was her baby boy. They look just alike. So when he was really young, she met a man at a job she was working at called Michael. His name is Michael Freeman. Michael Freeman raised him and treated him like that was his birth son. And that was a beautiful thing to watch. She married Michael Freeman, and then they had a daughter together named Brandy. So Allen has a sister named Brandy, and I love just watching the closeness between him and everybody that's in his family to this day. His grandmother, she's passed away, but she was a big influence. And not only was Allen a star basketball player in high school, but he was an even better star football player. Football was his first love. He started playing football at the age of 5 and killed it. This was so interesting because this is what I never understood about this crazy crap they pull in the NFL, where they talking about black guys can't be the quarterback because they don't have the brain power and the mental capacity. Who you think was the quarterback in the segregated schools? Who do you think been the quarterback? Y'all don't make an ounce of sense with this ridiculousness y'all say. Allen was the quarterback. This boy played daggone near every position. He was the wide receiver. You would see one play where he would throw it for a touchdown. The next play, he catching it for a touchdown. He was a defensive back. He played cornerback and safety, punt returner. I mean, he looked like Deion Sanders returning punts. He looked like Gary Clark running back. He looked like Art Monk, the wide receiver. Then he looked like Lawrence Taylor when he was tackling people. I mean, the boy could play every position. It was ridiculous. So in his junior year, he won the state championship in football. Then he turned around and won the state championship in basketball. The boy was on fire. And so he wanted to play with Joe Smith, who was going to Maryland, but he wanted to go to a school that had a good football team and a good basketball team. He wanted to go to Notre Dame to play both sports. But yeah, we'll tell you what derailed that in 1 second. While in high school as a junior, he met the woman who would become his wife of 32 years. Her name is Tawana. He met her, and they're still together to this day. They have 5 children. I'm just excited to even tell that part of the story. But yeah, they met as juniors. She went to a different school than he went to, and they just were inseparable ever since. And just a wonderful love story that continues on to this day. But one part that derailed him, and this is what I mean, when you're young, peer pressure, you're always doing something wrong before you do it right. Something derailed his whole life that had he just spent time that night with Tawana, none of this would have happened. It was Valentine's Day, 1993. Allen was 17 years old, and he was supposed to be with his girlfriend. Every couple is together on Valentine's Day. That's the only day of the year where you're obligated to be together. But instead of being with Tawana, he decides to hang out with his boys and go to a bowling alley on Valentine's Day. First of all, why these boys don't have a girl to hang out with of their own on Valentine's Day? And if you knew you were supposed to be hanging out with Tawana, why didn't you invite her to the bowling alley? Maybe she could have helped keep you out of trouble that night. So they at the bowling alley. They said there's 10 white people at the bowling alley, and a fight breaks out. So in the beginning of the fight, they said Allen wasn't around, but he got into the melee somehow and got bust in his head and had a big a gaping wound in the back of his head. So somebody got him, but apparently it was a melee, and they said it was a racial melee. So as teenagers, what happens? You get in trouble. It's a misdemeanor. Your parents might have to pay a fine and you take your behind home. But what the state of Virginia, the Commonwealth, that raggedy place, every time I go through Virginia, I get a daggone ticket. Them cops will look in your car, see what you look like, and then the cherries come on. Virginia is egregious with it. And so, yeah, Virginia, that's the place with the Lovings, Mildred and Richard Loving. When 1958, they got arrested in their bed as a married couple for being interracial. They had already had 2 birth children at that time. And Mildred got sent to jail. And Richard would sit out in front of the jail in his car and look up at her jail cell at night because he didn't get arrested. She got arrested because Virginia had an unwritten law back then that you can't arrest a white man. One of my friends that grew up in Virginia, his name was Joe Recker. He's since deceased. Rest in peace, Joe. He's the one who told me about the law because he became a corrections officer in the 80s. And he said this drunk white man came in the hole. You can't arrest a white man. Like it was still the 40s and 50s. And Joe said he shoved him down in that cell and said, shut up. So Virginia had these laws. So that's why Mildred went to jail pregnant and Richard didn't, because he was a white man. But they had been married, but their license was in DC. And so Virginia's like, we don't have to respect a DC marriage license, and put her in jail. So this is the place that got Allen Iverson. Not a lot had changed between then and 1993. And so they railroaded this 17-year-old. And the only reason they made it a big deal was because he was famous. So, because if he wasn't famous, like I said, it would have been a misdemeanor and a fine. But not only did they want to get him and make an example out of him, probably due to jealousy, they waited 8 months to file the charges so that he would be 18 and they could file it as an adult felony. So you're thinking, how does this turn into a felony? Well, they use something that doesn't even get used in a case like this. They called it maiming by mob. Boy, when they want to get you, they'll come up with all kinds of stuff. Let me tell you what maiming by mob means, because I looked it up on Chat GPT. Hold up. Maiming by mob is an old Virginia felony statute that makes every member of a mob legally responsible. If anyone in the group seriously injures someone, even if it's not proven who threw the punch. To convict someone under this law, prosecutors had to show a mob existed, legally defined as three or more people acting together. They weren't a mob. They were a bunch of high school kids who came to a bowling alley. They weren't a mob. They didn't plan together, have an organization, and decide as a mob we're going to go do X, Y, and Z. They were children that went to the bowling alley because they were friends from the same high school. That's not what this statute was meant for, but they finessed it. So it says the mob acted with intent. How do you act with intent when a fight is breaking out and you're defending yourself and they're defending themselves? That's not intent. That's self-defense. Someone was seriously injured. Yeah, they said one girl was seriously injured, but we don't know if that girl caused the incident that got herself injured. The defendant was part of the mob, even if they didn't personally injure anyone. He wasn't part of a mob. He was an individual at a bowling alley that met his friends down there to have a fun time on Valentine's Day when he should have been with Tawana. And it was originally meant for lynch mobs. The law dates back to Jim Crow era Virginia, designed to prosecute mob violence like lynchings, where identifying a single attacker was difficult. Using it in a team bowling alley fight was extremely rare. There was no proof Allen Iverson injured anyone. There was no evidence that Allen Iverson threw the bottle that caused the head injury to the woman or directly injured the victim. The prosecution's theory was he was there, therefore he's guilty. That's legally possible under this statute, but highly controversial. Then the last part of this mob violence was only the black teens were charged. None of the white teens were charged. Iverson and three other black teenagers were prosecuted. No one from the white group involved in the fight was charged with anything. This selective prosecution raised serious racial and fairness concerns, especially given the local history of segregation in Hampton, Virginia. So, yeah, so now the part of episode 1 that we're up to is Allen was convicted of 5 years in prison by this judge because of this maiming by mob railroad job. So clearly they wanted to ruin this young man's life. You have a young man who's on his way to a 4-year free ride to any prestigious college of his choice, and you decide that you're going to ruin his life. So now, if you are successful in that, how did you win? Now you have somebody who can't get generational wealth, who now might be so bitter he becomes a criminal or a drug addict or an alcoholic. How does that help the state of Virginia? So yeah. So that's where episode 1 ends. They ended with him getting interviewed by Ted Koppel in a white Virginia prison jumpsuit. So I will come back to you with more of episode 2 of the Allen Iverson documentary. It is really, really good. It makes you laugh, it makes you cry, it makes you think, it makes you reflect. And what I really love is not only they tell you about these incidents, but they have the footage. So they tell you about him being a phenom in football. They're showing you the footage. That stuff looked like O.J. Simpson at USC. Then they show you him at basketball, killing it as a young kid. I mean, then they show you in the Nike tournaments. I mean, everything is documented. All this stuff, all this footage exists. Even the brawl, they show some of the bowling brawl footage. They show some of him in trial. He looks so sad. The footage really set this whole thing off and was different than some of the other documentaries I had seen. The amount of stuff that they can corroborate and can show you, it makes you feel like you were there. So I'll be back with episode 2. This is Alicia Cooper, standing on business.